was accumulating in the last part of this game as Petrie drives it long. Ben Brown in good position here over the top. Lindsay Thomas. He'll enjoy this. Floated in from the side, Richo.
That was a great mark. During Petrie too, what a great step from him on this half-forward flank. He's had it. Oh, he's given it to Boomer.
Oh, great start. There it is. Handed it off to his mate.
Hello and welcome to The Stern Look. I'm your guest host this evening, Jay-Z. Joining me on the panel tonight, I have Philly Roo. Welcome, Philly.
G'day, mate. How are you?
Very good. And Rob Zombie.
Great to be here.
And our ever reliable and only remaining regular member, Quiff.
Hello, everybody.
All right, so flowing into the usual format tonight, starting out with two thumbs up, two thumbs down. My thumbs up for this week, first of all, Drew Petrie's return to form. We'll probably go into this a bit more detail later, but played a terrific game and arguably out-boomered Boomer with a very special Goal of the Week nomination. On the same note, Boomer 427, which we'll no doubt talk a bit more about. Absolutely terrific achievement. My thumbs down, the kicking for goal was a bit frustrating as it has been for a couple of weeks. We just seem to waste a lot of really good forward entries with terrible finishing. And the Jared Waite re-injury, it was... I think when we saw Waite coming back in, or I at least was quite hopeful because I think he's quite important to our September chances, but within probably 30 minutes it all went to shit. So that was a disappointing aspect of last week. Quiv, what about you?
Yeah, obviously I love getting that record. I guess a dislike to that. I thought the game was pretty boring, despite the good win. Another more round, I guess, out there dislike of the Etihad Stadium surface. I noticed 2 weeks ago it's dust by the Sunday twilight game. It's absolutely pathetic. There's 3 games on that weekend. We've been lucky to play the first game for a couple of weeks, but what a horrible ground that is.
Yeah, and the players seem to dislike it very strongly too. It's a bit of a worry, especially given it's our home ground. And there's questions on how much of an impact that's had on our injuries this year.
Yeah, well, I just looked at it last week. I think it's having quite a lot on not just ours, but the Bulldogs and everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting that the Bulldogs and us two Etihad teams seem to be sort of the strongest hit by injury. Maybe Fremantle, but I think a lot of that's put on.
Are you showing sympathy for those brave Bulldogs by saying what you just said?
God, no. I gave them sympathy when Murphy went down. I like Murphy. The rest of them can get stuffed. On that note, Philly?
I'm going to say my first positive is J-Mac's game. He played really, really well. I thought he was clearly best on ground. I had a look at the votes thread and was a little bit bemused that some people left him out when he clearly starred, I thought. And my other thumbs up is for Lindsay Thomas. I wasn't on the podcast obviously last week because there wasn't one and I wouldn't have been on it anyway. But his game against Collingwood was out freaking standing. His giving of the goal to Boomer was top draw. And I declared today to a bunch of mates that Lindsay Thomas is now my absolute all-time favourite shin boner. I love him. He's a gun. And my thumbs down is it doesn't feel like the injury list is moving quick enough. I don't know. So Giant Roo just put on there an update of the injury list and it had Taylor Garner 1 to 2 weeks. And I swear to God he was a test last week. So does that mean he's had a reoccurrence or does it mean they're resting him longer or what's going on? And the Jared Waite adding to it for 5 to 6 weeks. I think it's basically the end of the season for him. We'll battle to get back unless we make the grand final, and even then you bring him in with no preparation.
Just the season, you reckon?
I'm not sure what they'll do with him at the end. I mean, it's a real tough one, I think, with him because he showed for the first 8 weeks just how good he is and how he was. I think he was the number 1 ranked player in the competition, and this niggling little hip thing has crippled him. And it. I mean, if they can say 100% that the hip's fine, then I've got no doubt he could return next year. And maybe they just manage him a little bit differently. Like he doesn't travel, he plays the Melbourne games, or he has every one game a month off or something like that. If we can get him through, because he's clearly still got the quality. I mean, the goal he kicked from the boundary was off its head last week. So I think, ability-wise, he's still got it, and he's still got his speed, he's still got his leap, his hands are still amazing, and he's a good kick for goal. So I would imagine if they can get an assurance that his hip will be fine long term, I think he would play again next year.
It's amazing that we've come to this. It doesn't feel like that long ago, or in some aspects it feels like forever ago, but he was one of the best players in the competition for the first 9 weeks.
Yeah.
And 10 weeks down the track, we're talking about whether he plays next year. Added to that, the finals he played last year, he almost won that Richmond game along with a couple others.
Yeah. I guess the problem is, though, because he's had such an injury-riddled career, though. I mean, there's got to be a question mark on there, doesn't there?
Yeah, and then it comes back to whether Eddie had plays into that and whatnot, but who knows? What about you, Rob?
Look, thumbs up, obviously, is how brave our boys have been to win without Garner and Jacobs and Wright and Higgins and Donald and Ford and Wade, Black,
So brave.
Turner.
Yeah.
So brave.
So brave.
So brave. Extra positive was being at 427. Just a thing. But the added extra bonus of being at 427 was watching it without commentary.
I actually said to my wife, the best thing about going to the football at the moment is that you don't have to listen to any commentary.
Yeah, which leads into my thumbs down. After Linz gave Boomer that goal, which was obviously the best moment of the night, how long did they bang on about, Boomer begged him for it, Boomer wanted it, it was Boomer's idea? Of course it wasn't Boomer's idea, it was Thomas's idea. He'd spoken about it all week, and he's done it before. He did it in his 300s, his 350th. Stupid.
The commentators have just got no idea. It's incredible how they have jobs.
Yeah, it's a sad state that it seems the qualifier for having a job in AFL commentary has nothing to do with knowing AFL football or being able to commentate or give any insight, and has everything to do with having recently retired.
It's funny to think about it. The commentators that give you the shits, like, take, for example, Basil. Give him the shits when he's doing North games, but I couldn't care less when I'm a neutral. But Bruce and BT even annoy me when they're pumping up North. Like that Brucey growl thing that he has, that you can tell he's getting up an erection. It annoys me when he's talking about the other thing, but I'm a neutral, he just always annoys me.
Everything Bruce says annoys me. When he says off a step every single time anyone kicks the football, even if they've had 3 bounces, when he says A at the end of every sentence, it drives me mad. I just fucking hate him.
We should put Bruce out of the past. Don't you think, Dennis? Don't you reckon?
Yeah, everything ends in a question mark.
Oh, it's so annoying.
I'm just going to have to try and attend every game from now on, because every time I watch it on TV, it drives me nuts. Anyway, we'll roll on from there into club discussion. And obviously the big event, well, it was sort of the big event of last week, but we didn't do a podcast, so we're going to focus this week on the Boomer 427 milestone. So I'll throw it out to the panel and just give us your famous Boomer memory or any reflections you sort of have on his career, whatever you like. Philly, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, look, like Rob said, it was really a privilege to be there on Saturday night. I think Boomer seems to have been at the club forever. I remember clearly that State of Origin game and being so stoked that a North Melbourne player could play so well on that stage. And he's just a superstar, and he looks like he's still got so much left in the tank. Like, I'm 100% positive he plays on next year, and wouldn't be shocked if he played the year after, which seems so ridiculous. But it's strange. It's strange to see a North Melbourne team without Boomer in it. As for favourite Boomer moment, that's a good question. I reckon it was the hanger he took against Footscray the year he was favourite for the Brownlow. I think that really got me up out of my seat. He took it. I think he took it on top of Brad Johnson's head, but I can't be positive on that one. But mate, a lot of the stuff I read this last week and the week before was about how Boomer was there right through all our really, really tough times and dragged us across the line in a lot of games in those years where we thought we might be relocated. And there's probably a train of thought that's not too far from the truth that without Boomer, we may not have survived here. So it's he's a legend, mate. We're blessed to have had him in our team.
Yeah,
That's exactly right. I was headed feeling. You think of 2007 and where that team was supposed to finish and where they did finish and the year Boomer had. Can you think of an alternative reality where they did finish bottom?
Yeah.
And they did have that to rally around, that result to rally around and say, look what sort of club we are?
It's been frightening. It's horrible to think about.
It's not so much no Carey, no North, but no Boomer, no North Melbourne Football Club.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a scary thought. And that's been just the funny reality, and it's not often discussed. As you said, there's legions of North fans that don't know a North without Brent Harvey. That's how long he's been around. And I made a mission myself. I went to Brisbane for the 400th. I made sure I was there last week for the record equaling game. Made sure I was there for the breaking game this week. It's just something that you're never going to see again. Like I don't think, and we always say this about records, but I can't see this record ever being beaten. I can't possibly see someone playing 430, 450 AFL games with the way the game's going now. I
think that's what he's going to do over the next sort of 12 months from now is he's going to put it out of reach for anyone to ever be able to get to. There's no way that someone can play for 21, 22, 23 years.
Well, I saw a fantastic interview. Clarky, maybe. I saw a fantastic interview with Trent Dumont this week, and they asked him about the 427 and how special it was, and he said, I hadn't really thought about it before the week, but in the lead up I was thinking about it and going, I don't think I've played 427 games of AFL in my life, let alone at professional level. Like even factoring in all the junior games. It's a ridiculous number of games.
Oh God, somebody did some sums about all that with all the junior games. It is something like 700. It's an incredible amount of football.
He's got some good genes, I know that. Queer, have you got anything to add on that?
Not so much about me, I guess. You pretty much covered it all. I'll just go my favourite moment. And for me, it's hard to go past that point that he keeps bounces down the wing.
The point of the century.
Goal of the year, defending the point of the century. What a moment there. It was just so exciting and so shattering at the same time. It's one of the first things I think of when somebody asked me about Boomer.
I couldn't agree more, Chris. But of all the at-the-ground moments that I've seen firsthand, the point of the century is probably the one that's the most memorable.
Yeah, I never liked it yesterday.
I wasn't there for the 3 goals in 3 minutes against Essendon.
Oh, that was special. But the one thing that trumps it for me, and my favourite Boomer memory, is the goal against the Bulldogs where he had about 4 possessions in 10 seconds and sort of kicked it off the ground to keep it in play when it looked like it was going for a behind. And then
the
hand passed it off to Tomo, I think it was, and then got it back and finished it. That was an amazing goal.
That was a very good goal.
Another very quick favourite moment is when he knocked the ball out of Prentice's hand last year and we got a 50-metre penalty and all the West Coast blew up. It was typical Boomer because it was so cheeky and so smart. I loved it.
And the ongoing altitude on the main board about it is worth every bit.
Oh, like he'd shot somebody's dog the way some people were carrying on. It's incredible.
Well, speaking of carrying on, Michael Gleeson from The Age wrote an article about it calling Boomer a cheat and saying he should have been suspended for it. So the next day, I had a subscription to The Age at the time, and I rang them up. And I told them I never wanted a copy of The Age to be on my property ever again. And it was because of Michael Gleeson and his horrendous article. And they said, no problem. Well, this week's ones will just arrive because you've already paid for those. And I said, you know what? If it comes, I'm going to pick up the paper, I'm going to drive to your office, and I'm going to throw it at you. I don't want it here. And so it didn't arrive. So I sort of spat the money a little bit in reverse over the Birmingham.
Oh my god, that's incredible.
Yeah, I've got a temper.
Only other things to mention for club discussion this week. Jimmy McMillan's playing his 100th game this weekend, and Drew Petrie, the unluckiest milestone man because he keeps getting overshadowed by Boomer, is going to move to outright second on the club's games list. Plays his 312th to move past Archer. Terrific achievement, but as we said, kind of overshadowed when there's another guy 100 and something games in front of him.
Just as I guess a general club thing, I don't know where else it fits. The academy sessions have been kicking off. Anyone, any thoughts on that?
I haven't seen that. Have you got something you'd like to share?
Just that the club's been tweeting and putting articles up and photos and what have you about the various Tasmanian and Wyndham and women's academy stuff is going on. I know we've all started a Taron Thomas mega thread already.
As long as we get Taron Thomas, I'm happy.
Thoughts on academies, on Tassie? Is it too much? Is it just reward for putting a bit in? Is it?
Well, I think it's just reward. I mean, I think Hawthorn are pissed off if they didn't get it, and anything that pisses off Hawthorn can't be a bad thing. So, I think. I mean, some people are under the impression that there's not many Aboriginal people that live in Tasmania, but that's false. There's a lot of Aboriginal people that live in Tasmania, and there's a lot of football talent in Tasmania. And if GWS and Gold Coast and Sydney and Brisbane and all these other teams get these academies in these areas to foster talent. I mean, my pet peeve out of last year's draft is that young boy Hopper who GWS took, who a lot of people believe was the best player out of the draft last year. He grew up a massive North Melbourne fan. He was born in the Riverina, but he went to boarding school at St Pat's in Ballarat from when he was 14 years old. He never went to the academy at GWS, and they've plucked him out and taken him with an academy pick. It's ridiculous and it's annoying. So if clubs like that can take advantage of it, I think, good on North for getting on the front foot and grabbing an area, even if it is Tassie.
Yeah, there's a bit of a hoo-ha made about it, but I found it completely unsurprising given they announced the mainland a couple of weeks before Tassie and Hawthorn got half the country. And my first thought looking at that was we must get Tassie because otherwise we've got royally screwed in the arse. Hawthorn have the entire Northern Territory plus half of Victoria. It's not at all surprising that we got Tassie.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know that...
13-year-old.
Sorry?
Northern Territory looks big, but it only has about 27 13-year-olds.
Yeah, I don't know. There's still a lot of footy talent that comes out of the Territory. And Hawthorn are very good at developing talent. But anyway, let's move on. We'll quickly cover VFL discussion in Nate's absence. The first thing to mention was a rather bizarre three-quarter time speech from John Lamont, which I think Quiv's going to play for you now.
Who's been bitten by a mosquito? All of us. We all have been. Not many of us have been bitten by a camel, have we? It's the little things that bite you. Right? So, Swanee, you rush that point. Where are you? You rush that point. Brucey, you take the good mark out here. You give the handball. Okay? People want to see ruckman taking mark and bringing little blokes into the game. Not going back and kicking it. Little things like that. They come back and bite you. We let them in for a couple of goals late. Righto? Yep.
So that was one of the weirdest speeches I've ever heard. But obviously the speech worked as they had a three-quarter time lead of 17 points and ended up running out a massive 63-point victory. So apparently mosquitoes is the way to encourage players to play well. Whatever works. Of the North boys, Dor and Durden both got amongst the goals. They kicked 4 each. The other North boys to impress were Fordham, who had a very good 14 handball receives and 2 goals himself. And Mountford also played very well. Of the Werribee boys, Gribble was terrific. He had, I think, 44 possessions. And Matt Hansen showed again why many think he should be on an AFL list. This week's game is against Box Hill at Box Hill Oval on Sunday at 2 p.m. It's going to be a crucial game for the Bees. If they want to make the finals, they currently sit 9th. I think they're 1 win behind Essendon. And after this week, I think Box Hill are about 11th. And after this week, they play 3 sides in the top 8. So basically got to win this one to have any chance of getting into the 8, I think. You guys got anything to add on the VFL?
I thought was interesting in... Sorry, Joe, Ed.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought was interesting in that game with the post-game interviews was that they're running a triple towers in there. And Madge talking about how well the triple towers worked.
And yet all we're talking about on the North Board is that the triple towers isn't working in the AFL?
Yeah, pretty much. Mind you, I haven't had the time or energy to weigh on that, but I think the death of the triple towers is greatly exaggerated.
Oh, I totally agree. I don't think it's dead at all. Waite's been injured and we've replaced him with Dor.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed. And there's quite a few...
2.5 towers if Wood is the third tall.
Well, when Wood was playing, we were playing 4 towers. So it's not dead at all. I mean, and a lot of the other teams that are doing quite well are also employing quite tall forward lines, Adelaide being the chief example. So
It's the thing with Wood, and a couple of years ago when Lockie Hansen was in good nick, things that are tall or medium tall with a huge tank can bring to the side. Massively difficult matchups.
Yeah, and there was a classic example on the weekend.
Who's tall enough to run with him on the wing, and who's got the tank to run with him in the forward line?
Yeah.
He could run off his man all day and run him ragged up the ground on the rebound.
And Brownie was the classic example of that this week, because at one stage he took a contested mark around about the goal square, and my wife said to me, is he playing on a much smaller guy? And I went, yeah, that happens most weeks because we have 3 tall forwards that are about 200 centimetres. Eventually one of them plays on a shorter guy and you'll get the mismatch. It just depends on who it is.
Well, one of the pluses I saw from last week was the way that because they manhandle Brown every week. He just doesn't get the free kicks that other forwards do. But I think they've started taking notice of it a little bit. He got a couple of free kicks last week. And hopefully that's a sign of things to come.
He got a couple, but he was also molested every single contest.
Yeah, but we all talk about how Lindsay Thomas gets ripped off by umpires, but Ben Brown just gets bent. And you could see he was starting to get frustrated last week, and he had a massive crack at one of the umpires. And I think from that point on, he got looked after a little bit better. But it's
been the same with our forwards for years. Drew Petrie gets manhandled constantly and very rarely gets anything for it.
Drew's too nice of a guy to blow up, though. He just doesn't say anything. But just quickly on Ben Brown, we're so lucky to have him. He's a gun. He's going to be so good.
Yeah, but wasn't he picked 47 or something?
Oh yeah, he's
ridiculous.
He could become one of the best forwards in the comp. Like he's probably in the top. I don't know. Is he in the top 5 young best forwards right now? He probably is. Then you've probably got Tom
Lynch would be number 1.
Tom Lynch would be number 1. But
something else that came up this week? The Bulldogs liked him in that draft year, but took Matt Fuller instead.
Yeah, they're
exactly. But the other terrific thing that came up this week was there's 2 key forwards that have basically similar stats that were drafted about the same time. One's on about $1.4 million and one's on about 200,000. Who would you rather be?
Exactly.
They've completely screwed their salary cap with that selection. But anyway, let's not talk too much about them just yet. We'll get onto them in the preview. Let's move on to question time. We've got quite a number of questions to cover this week. Thanks everybody for submitting those. First of all, Muttley asks, who is the current leader in the North Board Whipping Boy Cup? He's got a few nominations here. We've got Gibbo, Majak, Swallow, Tomo, BMAC, Atley, Mullet. Take your pick, really. Philly, what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that there was a time this year that Lindsay Thomas would have been in the conversation, but it feels like that time has passed. But I think it's always going to be Sam Gibson as long as he plays football in blue and white. I don't agree with it. I think Gibbo's a ripper, but there's a fair bit of distaste for what Gibbo brings sometimes.
Interesting. I agree with you, but I actually think...
I reckon the other Dean has single-handedly rescued Gibbo from the whipping station, the whipping frame.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I was at the footy the other night and he was
there's
coughing.
still a couple. I mean, there's still Aryan who wants him gone, delisted, castrated, so he can't breed and have boys because he's played his 100 games. So,
have you seen his girlfriend? He's going to be breeding.
Yeah. But my pick for current whipping boy leader would be Sean Outley. The amount of relative to performance, way out of proportion for Ats for mine. What do you reckon, Quip?
I personally think it should go to Swallow. I don't know Swallow. You saw how, I don't know what it was last week, but he was shaking them. He can't kick the goal. He's just an inside mid that offers nothing more, and I think he should be the whipping boy.
Sorry, we're talking about two different things. So my opinion on Ats is that his whipping boy status on the board is way worse than his actual performance on the field.
I do apologise. Obviously, I see everything that's said about Atlee harshly, but I think the times is warranted. He's been reasonably putrid for a lot of the year, so I think most of the time it has been warranted. Everybody knows he's got the potential. It's just frustrating, so no reason that he can't be whipping boy at times.
Interestingly, I actually think the same thing about Swallow. I was going to nominate Swallow because I think he's probably the one that seems to be frustrating most people at the moment. I agree with what Rob said in terms of Todd somewhat turning the tide on Gibbo, and the fact that he's willing to re-watch every game and dissect every possession has put the somewhat less research-happy posters in a box. I think the tide is
I'm going to take some credit
strong
for that too, because my dissection of it. Sorry, you go.
I think the tide is most strong with Swallow. I think the fact that he's our captain and there's still weekly calls for him to be dropped or traded or whatever gives him the cup at the moment.
There was a couple of posters calling for trying to get Ben Cunnington in the conversation last week, too, by the way. And I thought Cunnington played a really, really good game on the weekend.
Best game of the season for the weekend.
Yeah, and people were slagging him off, saying he was no good. Ridiculous.
I don't think he was no good, but I've been on hand several times this year saying he frustrates the shit out of me because he could be 1,000 times better.
I'll tell you what, he was far better than your namesake on Saturday night.
Even though he was terrific on Saturday night, he still made a shitload of errors.
Yeah,
but we'll get into that in the review. Let's move on.
Inside mids do, and here's another one. I just find it a bit hilarious that people think because Cunners has a certain sort of economy of movement just about his game that equates to lazy. Not discounting the idea that he might be a bit under on effort some weeks, but the fact that he just doesn't move with a lot of flair and flourish therefore means he's lazy is a little bit hilarious to me.
I don't think it's the movement. I rate his... I mean, he seems to move through traffic in slow motion a la a Scott Pendlebury, and I rate that as class. What I see as lazy is when he doesn't get back off the mark and kicks it into the man on the mark every 2 weeks, roughly.
But I'm not sure that's lazy. What I think that is Cunners sees things that other players don't see, and he sees people moving to places that other people don't see. And it's him, I think, trying to be extra creative. I don't think it's lazy. I just think it's Cunners being Cunners. Because sometimes when he pulls things like that off, we all go, oh, my God, let's make a GIF about it because it's the best thing I've seen. So I don't think you can have it both ways. It's like someone going for a hanger and taking 5 of them and you go, that's the mark of the year, and then the same guy getting up there and giving away a free kick. If you're going to love the things that we love that Cunners does, you've got to take a little bit of the good with the bad, I would have thought.
See, I think I can have it both ways because Daniel Wells sees things that other players don't see, and I can't remember the last time he kicked into the man on the mark.
Daniel Wells butchers the ball way more than Cunners, mate.
I would agree.
I agree, but I cannot remember the last time he made an under nines mistake of kicking it into the man on the mark because he didn't take.
Okay, that's fine, but that's great, and I would agree he doesn't kick it into the man on the mark, but he turns it over on the run more than what Cunners does because I'm saying
that's because Cunners is never on
even
the run.
Daniel Wells doesn't see. but I watched the first quarter a lot over the last few days. I reckon if you sat down with Daniel Wells and said, who's your favourite teammate, he's going to say Ben Cunnington because Cunnington feeds Wells.
Of course. That's his job.
Those clearances he got in the first quarter were just unbelievable. And no one talks about them.
No one talks about them because that's not sexy. I kind of get that on Big Footy. You know, the so-called bullfrogs are sexy and we all talk about them and they're rubbish. But no one talks about the inside midfielders that get it out to the Wells types and the Mackenzie's types and all of that. But I agree he was absolutely terrific in the midfield.
Yeah.
And his clearance work was terrific. But the things that frustrate me about him were still there on Saturday night. But anyway, let's not get bogged down. We've got a number of questions to get through.
Getting it out of the Mackenzie type. So I had to watch the replay a little bit for a review for another website. And the number of times it was Mackenzie getting out to Dumont instead of vice versa was interesting last one.
Yeah. And what on the Dumont thing, how well does Dumont use the ball moving forward, especially giving it to Ben Brown?
I did notice there was a new poster with that name this week.
I did notice that too.
All right, moving on. We've got a lot of questions to cover. GN80 asks, I'm supremely underwhelmed at the suggestions of Vickery and Main as trade targets suggested by the media. With Prestia supposedly going to Tigerland, God help him, who should we really be targeting? Quiff?
Gee, that's a good question. First of all, I didn't know about that Main target. That's ridiculous. Even slightly less ridiculous than the Tyrone Vickery suggestion. Who should we be targeting? I still think we lack outside class. Del Santo, I've said it before, has lost it. And Wells is a glass cannon. I think that's what we need consistently. Outside class, someone who's going to hit the target, the forward on the chest 90% of the time. Who that is, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't have a specific player in mind, but I still think replacements for Wells and Harvey are the number one priority. Following on from that, he also asked, do we necessarily have to add tall forwards? If we take into account the potential retirements of Waite and Petrie, do we see our forward line next year being Wood, Brown, Dorr, Thomas, probably Boomer, Garner, and is that potent enough? What are your thoughts, Philly?
Well, just quickly first on the previous question, I don't like Tyrone Vickery at all, not at all. But I would rather have.
I don't think even Richmond supporters like Tyrone Vickery.
But I would rather have Tyrone Vickery's wank stain cum rag than Chris Main. I think he shouldn't get a game for the Manangatang Thirds. He's that bad of a footballer, Chris Main. I would struggle to go and watch
frantically searching for the Skype like button. I don't know where it is. How do I do this? How do I like this? Comment of Phillies.
Vickery's bad. Right. Vickery's bad, but if we had to take one of them, I'm taking Vickery over Main. Anyway, in answer to the other question, I think we don't necessarily need to go after any more tall forwards. We've given another 2 years of development by having Waite there as a bit of a stopgap. And then hopefully one of the younger guys can really step up. And I think Majak's going to get the next 4 weeks to show us what he's got. The players that we should be targeting, I think it's great. I said to you guys in the pre-show, I think it's great that Prestia looks to have committed with Richmond because I didn't really want him to go to a good team. And I think it's going to be hilarious forever that Richmond are going to give up a first-round draft pick for him, which means they've given away the second-round draft pick for Yaron because they did that last year, which means their first pick in the draft is going to be the 3rd round. They don't have a ruckman. They don't have any forwards except for Jack Rewalt, who's obviously, as everyone is getting older every year, their back line is so heavily reliant on one player that it's hilariously funny. that club is going to be in the toilet for a long time. I think the players that we should be going after, I know everyone talks about David Swallow, and I have it on very good authority from a conversation I had last week at the footy that North are going really hard at him for next season, that we're going to try to get him this off-season. I think he'd be a great get. But I know Jaeger O'Meara has bodgy knees, but he's the type of player that we want. I think Gold Coast would look to trade him if we can give them something decent. Something decent to what we're going to give up to get him, though. That's, I don't know. I mean, apart from picks, I don't know if there's any.
Coach.
We're not giving up. apart from picks, I don't know who you're going to give up because we like our team, we like our players. I don't know. Quiv, would you give up Atley for O'Meara?
Yeah, I think so. O'Meara's bloody good.
We won't do it, but that's
No.
what it's going to take. I think something like that.
O'Meara is a bloody good player if you can get on the path.
This is very unpopular because Ghana's a very popular player on the board, but perhaps we should trade our injury-prone so-called future stars. They can see if they can fix Ghana's hamstring, and we'll see if we can fix Amira's knees.
We'd have to give him something special on top of that, though.
Yeah, I know that's not a straight swap, but I'm saying, you've got to balance. And I know, Saunders seemed like a god 12 months ago, and then this year we've been hit with the injury stick, and there's a lot of people questioning his position. But you've got to sort of balance how many injury-prone or whatever you want to call them players you have on your list. And Taz has seemed to turn that corner, but we've still got, the Waits, the Higgins, etc. You can't carry them all.
Yeah, but Higgins
impact.
Yeah.
I'm not saying either of them are mistakes. I'm just saying if you have a Higgins and a Wait and a Garner and an O'Meara and a David Swallow, that's a lot of injury risk that you're carrying.
Yeah.
Anyway, Quiv, seeing as you're the resident Brad Scott lover, I'll hand Gasso's question to you. He asks, Scott gets asked at a presser this week. Scott gets told at a presser this week that we've only beaten 2 top 8 sides and appears perplexed. Should he know more about where we sit relative to the other teams?
To be honest, I've been thinking we've been playing Hawthorn this week for the whole past week, so I can't blame him for not knowing who we've beaten, who we haven't. I forget. I don't even know the score half the time we walk out. I don't know if we won or lost. That's it. So I think I missed that score.
Alrighty. Rob, Lappy Panther asks, Brad Scott admitted the thought of Lockie Hansen playing forward had crossed his mind. If you had to choose, and not at all is an option, would you rather him in the team as a defender or a forward?
I don't mind him as a forward if a spot opens up, to be honest. He's a classic swing man. I mean, I know he's settled in. It's like, he plays one good game of defence. He must never be picked forward again. He plays one game as a forward. Oh, he's a forward now. But, yeah, I'm happy with Lockie as a forward.
He couldn't kick a set shot.
He's not as terrible a shot for goal as people think. He just doesn't look as smooth as some other blokes.
I went to a VFL game at Punt Road a little while ago now, and Lockie played forward in the last quarter because Magic was being rested. And I think he kicked, from memory, he kicked 3 goals in about 10 minutes. And I know he's playing against VFL competition, and I know it was Richmond's VFL competition, which makes it even worse. But he looks good as a forward. I mean, I think Lockie's biggest problem is, apart from the injuries that he's had and the concussion and everything else, is that Robbie Tarrant has taken Scott Thompson's role, and Scott Thompson's taken Lockie Hansen's role. I think they've shuffled across. Thompson's playing that sort of intercept, almost a lot of weeks a bit loose and all those sorts of things. And I just don't think that Lockie's got a role in that back line anymore. And the forward line seems to have a queue a mile long of forwards that can kick goals. So I'm not sure that Lockie's got a place next year.
I'd agree with that. I think Tarrant has been the fullback that we've been crying out for years. For years, everyone's been saying that Thompson's better playing the Hansen role, if you like it, and it's worked brilliantly this year. And unless one of those two go down, I'm in the not at all camp because we've already got Wood, Dorr, Petrie, Waite, Brown. We've got full forwards coming out our ass. So unfortunately for Lockie, he's back up at the moment.
So I guess the point in favour of Lockie is when he was in good form, as I said a bit earlier, when it was the pre-show and the show, it was a tremendously tricky matchup because of his tank. So he had the size to mark and the tank to run off. Whereas most extra sort of floating defenders are like the Doherty or Laird or McKenzie or what's his name, Easton Wood type, that are sort of classic mediums with a decent set of hands. So Lockie as the spare was a really kind of unique and interesting proposition, I thought, in defence. That's sort of in defence of him having a potential role.
Yeah, we've got a few in that category of the awkward sort of matchup, and I think it really depends on who is available. You know, I don't think we'd even be talking about Hansen as a forward if Brown, Petrie, and Waite were fit and firing. But by the same token, I don't think you can really talk about Hansen as defender if we've got the defenders all fit and firing, or the 12 defenders, which they are at the moment. So it's depends on who's available, I guess. And a little bit on that note, and our final question, SB Dan asked, the injury list is starting to look more promising, finally, with the potential for a few big ins over the next 2 weeks. We've got Taylor Garner listed as a test, Sean Higgins listed as 2 weeks, along with Luke McDonald at 2 weeks, and Jacobs and Sam Wright both listed as 1 week. So the question is, who's going to budge, who's in first, and do these guys need to come back through the twos? Philly, why don't you start us off?
I think of all of them, I think Higgins is the only one that would come straight in. I think the rest of them can play at least one game in the twos. I'm really looking forward to Luke McDonald getting back in the team, and Ben Jacobs and Sean Higgins. They're the three that I think. I didn't say Sam Wright, but Sam Wright's probably right on the cusp of that as well. But I think a game in the twos won't hurt any of them. But I just don't think Higgins. I think Higgins is just too good to play in the twos. He's class, and I think he could play a role in the ones straight away.
Quiff, your thoughts?
I agree with most of what Philly just said. I think the other one that could come straight back in would be Ben Jacobs, depending on what game he comes in for. Like him in the Sydney game, I think. But I think all he does is run with the player. As long as he can run, he can play, I think, as far as I'm concerned.
What about you, Rob?
I think if Daniel Wells can come back through the twos, so can Sean Higgins.
But Wells missed an entire year.
What's Scott's favourite line? The Ferrari and the mud or something like that?
Yeah. No, Nate and I watched him at Collingwood last year when he was coming back, and he's just a class above. But he obviously needed the run. So I think nobody Higgins, no Waite, no Jacobs, nobody's immune. You know, depending on the matchups of the week and who needs a run and whether the run's better at one level or another. Horses for horses.
Yeah, I'm somewhat on the fence on Higgins in particular. On one hand, I saw him come back earlier in the year from his injury, and he seemed to struggle for the first little bit and take a little bit of time to get back into touch. And on the other hand, I see it being the glaring hole in our side at the moment is class and touch around that half-forward line. And he, along with probably Jacobs, is probably the most important thing that we need back before September. I think Wright and McDonald would be nice.
I guess you get... Sorry.
So I was just going to say, I think Wright and McDonald would be very nice, and I'd love to have them back. But I think Muller and McKenzie aren't doing too bad a job back there. And I've personally sort of written Garner off for the year because his hamstrings are made of paper. But what were you going to say?
Say it's round 21, or round 22, and you're already settled in the 5th to 8th spot, and you pretty much know you're going to be playing in Melbourne first week of the finals unless something outrageous happens. It just comes down to what kind of run benefits the player and the team most. Do you really need to win? In which case, committing to someone who might only be able to play 60% game time hurts your chance to win, or will a game at the top level run them back into form quicker than a game at VFL? It's all about the best interests of the club and the team, not so much the player and whether they're ready to come back in and straight back in or not. I think everyone, ideally, with a otherwise clean injury list, comes through the VFL.
And this year is
a week. Assuming you're not coming off a 2-week ankle and you haven't dropped any fitness or anything, you're coming off a significant 5 weeks, 8, 10, 12-week thing. You're coming back through the VFL unless there's some other good reason that you'll get, a quicker ramp up and a better run through the seniors than the twos with finals coming up.
And this year will be an interesting test because it's a little bit unique in terms of previous years in that if, for example, someone comes back in round 23, in past years it's been quite often the case that they come back week 1, they're all right, they pull up quite sore and they struggle in week 2. This year we've got the scenario where we've got round 23, then a week off, then finals. So it could be quite good for some of those players to come back in round 23, blow out the cobwebs. I mean, it's a tough game against General West to blow out the cobwebs, but blow out the cobwebs, have a week to see how the body feels, and then ramp up for September.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be important that Werribee hopefully qualifies for the finals. I'm not sure when. Yeah. Do we know what week that the VFL home and away finishes? I mean, they're right on the
cusp. Same thing. They've got 4 weeks left, same as us.
Is that right? Okay. Well, they've got to qualify for finals. They really do.
Otherwise, there's no option for players to come back to the twos if they don't make it before round 23.
And that could be the thing too. Over the next few weeks, we're going to have players coming back. I mean, if Werribee had, for example, Sam Wright, Luke McDonald, Sean Higgins, Taylor Garner, Kane Turner, those guys running around in any team, they're going to be a lot better. I mean, they're going to be a good team to watch if they've got those players running around. This week becomes important against Box Hill. So hopefully they've got to make it for the good of North Melbourne, though.
Yeah, this week is certainly critical, as we mentioned earlier, in terms of their finals chances. So we'll know a lot more in 7 days. Moving on to the review. Julie, do you want to start us out with what you took out of the game?
Well, everyone I've spoken to since the game has said it was a shit game, and I don't know, I had fun. I enjoyed it. I felt like we were fully in control. You could see the pressure all over the field that we were putting on them. I found it interesting to get home and turn on the TV and watch the replay and hear them talking constantly about how St Kilda was such a high-pressure team, and it was something that they pretty much invented and no other team knew how to pressure as much as St Kilda. Whereas at the game, I felt that we out-pressured them, and watching the replay without the shit commentary, I believe that we did out-pressure them. I think that's the key to the way we played. It's the key to the way we played against the Bulldogs last time, and it's going to be important again this week, but that's not where we're at the moment. I thought Robbie Tarrant, after a slowish start, finished off really well and played a good game. Jamie McMillan, as previously discussed, was probably played the best game of his career thus far, and it was awesome to see Drew do the things that he did. I think we're a fit team, and we looked good, and we looked like we weren't going to run out of legs, and that's going to hold us in good stead as the season goes on. But overall, I had a really fun night. I thought it was a ripping game to be at, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, I agree. Sort of following on from what you said before, I thought McMillan was absolutely terrific. He had 31 disposals off half-back. He seemed to be that sort of calm head that we needed whenever other players were sort of panicking a little bit, and I thought that was reflected in the coaches' votes. And like you, I was a little bit surprised that he'd get that recognition in the votes on our board. As we sort of touched on before, I think Cunners was good in the middle. His clearance terrific, along with Swallow, who a lot of people were a bit frustrated about. But the clangers got me. I looked at the stats earlier. 6 clangers for Cunnington. Incidentally, 6 times more than the so-called turnover king, Sam Gibson. But as I said, to his credit, he had eight clearances ahead of Swallow and Gibbo, who both had 5. And definitely probably his best game for 6+ weeks, but still not the Carrington that I sort of look for as a top 5 draft pick. Petrie, as you touched on, returned to form. A nomination for both mark and goal of the year in 1 week is pretty impressive. Froggy's job on Stephen, in Jacob's absence was absolutely terrific, and it was nice to see a complete two-way job. He shut down Stephen completely and kicked a goal himself, and a really good game. Quiv, what did you take out of it?
I thought it was early, but I think you all mentioned Ben Brown. I thought it was an amazing game last week. The 3 goal, probably should have got that 4. I just thought it was incredible. Another person, I think, was Trent Bond. It's just immense. He chases hard and he's trying to tackle with none of the another person didn't do well stats-wise, and I think I spoke to you about the game, is Jed Anderson. He's almost there. He's getting into all the right spots. He's doing all the right things. He's just not getting the ball. And watching him last week, I can't wait to see him start getting the ball. Because if he can get it, he's off, and he's going to score a lot of goals.
Yeah, very much agree with that. I thought Anderson's pressure was terrific, but like you, I think he just needs to get a little bit more of the ball. And yeah, Brown's 3 goals, I think he ended up with, felt like 5 or 6, given the low scoring nature of the game. He was absolutely terrific. Rob, what did you take out of it?
Yeah, I'm pretty much with Cliff. I thought it was a dull game, salvaged by a few highlights. A couple of hangers from Drew, one from Lindsay, the handoff from Lindsay to Boomer, a couple of McKenzie kicks, a couple of Anderson tackles. There's stuff there that's like, I'm glad I came. Obviously, I'm glad I came because it was 4-7. It was a great game, it was all that. But there was enough there to make it worth being at without being a stellar game by any stretch of the imagination. And, the pressure was fine. Like, how to feel about how does it look for North's run up to the finals? Not terrible. It's all right. Pressure was good. Skills had their moments. You know, it's okay.
On the 4-2-7 aspect, how did you see, and I'll throw that out to all of you, how did you see the Boomer aspect of it? I personally thought, and this was despite him saying, you know, it's all about the win, it's not about me. Especially early on, I felt it was a bit too much about Boomer. I thought there was a few times where we went to him to give him a posse when he wasn't the best option. What do you guys think?
I agree. I think one of the Swallow turnovers I mentioned earlier was doing exactly that. Was trying to give it to Boomer when he was no spot to get it. But in saying that, I don't mind giving it to Boomer either. We know he's all good with ball in hand. You just got to pick the moments and the timing better.
I was okay with it. I thought it was kind of fun watching all the different things we were trying to do to get it to Boomer. If the game had been in doubt at any stage, I guess it would have sucked, but I don't think...
I wish he got that goal, though.
Yeah, I agree. But a couple of times we went to him just because he does actually get to the right spots and he does work really hard and he's a very offensive-minded player. So, I mean, I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, probably the only really obvious over-the-top trying to get it to Boomer was the Lindsay Thomas one where he got the goal, and I thought that was a real highlight. LT's a legend. Love it.
Yeah, I'm completely with Philly. I have nothing to add.
And yet, most people think LT is selfish. But anyway, let's not listen to most people because they're stupid.
Just quickly, actually, I did love the big Up Yours video that the club made. They said I was too small. They said I was selfish. Blah blah blah. And it was just a big fuck you to everyone, and it was brilliant.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Really?
The opinion was very much split on
the
that.
Northest thing ever to do a fuck the haters video.
Really?
To be honest.
Interestingly, and this very much split the board, I think. And I was very much with Quiv. I loved the video. I thought you were wrong 427 times is classic shin boner. That's North
Melbourne. It was an amazing video.
Yeah, I really liked it.
We are the team that no one, and there's hundreds of so-called footy experts out there at the moment patting themselves on the back saying, North got to 9-0 and we didn't rate them and now we've been proven right and blah, blah, blah. That's our club. And Boomer Personas pass it. I loved it. Anything to add on the Saints game before we move on?
No, I'm good.
Alrighty, let's move on to this week's game against the Bulldogs. Quiv, why don't you start us off with the teams and key matchups?
We'll correct you there first. From what the Bulldogs are saying, I believe we're actually playing the twos team. I will correct you there first. From what I've been reading on the Bulldogs board, we're actually playing their seconds team, so we're playing the brave Footscray, not the Western Bulldogs.
Very good.
So our game against Western has been cancelled, and we're now playing Footscray.
So if that's what they're saying is to believed, of course. So they've got a few forced changes. Obviously, a couple of them are just crap players, a couple of injuries. Kobe Stevens, Tom Victoria, Jack McRae, and Jed Adcock, who I didn't even know were still playing, have all been either omitted or injured. In come Dale Morris, Matthew Boyd, Nathan McCorvat, and Lucas Webb. They're not going to do much damage to us. In for North is Majak Dor, which I'm very happy with. It's a shame that it's for an injured Jared Waite, but I'm looking forward to Dor playing for the rest of the season. Matchups, I think not really doing much these days, but Fletcher on Boyd's got to come to it eventually. He's earning the billions of dollars. He's got all this pressure on. One day he's going to have that breakout game, and we need to make sure it's not on us, especially with all the hype around this particular game. Todd Goldstein, not much to go up against Roughhead, but hopefully he can continue gaining his form back. It's been reasonably good over the last 2 weeks, building back up into some form. Ben Brown should have no issues continuing on from last week with their relatively small and undermanned backline. I'll let somebody else chip in if they've got anything.
Philly, you want to pick up?
Well, I think the key matchups are going to be pretty much as it always is, the midfield things. I mean, I think we're going to dominate them at either end. I think our forward line's way stronger than their back line, and our back line's a fair bit stronger than their forward line. I think stopping string is going to be important, but failing that, they've got not much up there that worries me at all. In the midfield, everyone's best friend, Marcus Bontempelli, is going to be a key to stop or to make him accountable going the other way. It's not something that he particularly does well, I don't think, being accountable, but it's going to be interesting to see if we show a little bit of fire to him after he threw Lindsay under the bus. I think that Sam Gibson could get a role on him. I don't know what anyone else thinks about that. I think Dumont did a great job last week defensively, but I'm not sure that he and Bont will play on each other. But, I mean, I think he could do a job if he did go to him. I'm looking forward to seeing Ryan Clark have a big one after he had a bit of a down week last week. And I think Lindsay Thomas could get a hold of him and kick 6. 6 goals for Lindsay Saturday night.
Big goal. Would be nice.
Yep.
Rob, your thoughts?
I do like that on the club website just today there's an article that basically said we don't care how many possessions Lockie Hunter gets.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So I'm guessing we won't tag him. Look, at the risk of being the bleeding obvious, Bont and Stringer are the ones to look out for. Johannesson missed our last game. Do we have anyone who can stop him running rampant off half back? I don't know. Apart from that, I pretty much agree. Their midfield's a lot less scary without Wallace and Liberatore, so I'm not terribly concerned about that midfield battle in the big picture. tall forwards and tall backs. I think we've got them covered. We should be pretty firm favourites, I think.
On JJ, with a half forward line of Thomas, Burma, and Anderson, I rate Johannesson, and frankly, if he wants to run off those three players, good luck to him.
No, true.
Early in the year, the halfback run with Murphy and Suckling and Johannesson, etc., was the Bulldogs' game plan. But with their depleted lineup, if he wants to play, I'm going to run forward and leave their already strongly exposed defence more exposed, I'm perfectly happy for him to do that.
And make no mistake, that's our bag, is stopping other teams run. I mean, St Kilda, for the last 7 weeks, have run teams off their legs from half back and made teams look silly going the other way. We strangled them last week, and we did it. I know Johannesson, whatever his name is, wasn't playing last time we played them. But what was Footscray's score last time we played them? Did they get 45 points? We strangle teams like them. We bully them around the ball, and we bully them when they're trying to get the ball out of our back line. And I've got no problem with them trying to play that game. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, spot on. And I was going to make mention of this in the preview, but I thought it sort of made more sense here. As ugly as a lot of people thought the game was on Saturday night, it was exactly the kind of game we wanted to play.
Especially with this game coming up.
St Kilda have run teams off their feet. Their outside possession has been terrific. They're lacking inside possession, and we completely flipped that and said, let's just make this stoppage after stoppage after stoppage after stoppage. And it suits our team and our game plan down to the ground. And I totally expect us to do the exact same thing with the Bulldogs this week, especially with the fact that, the likes of Liberatore, etc. are out. If we make this a contested game and back in Goldie and Cunnington and Zillow and Zeeble, etc., I really don't see the threat. I'm quite happy for this to be an ugly, low-scoring, contested game a la Saturday night, because that suits us down to the ground and not the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Oh, and a late bulletin. I've just been checking Twitter. According to nmfc.com.au, Brad McKenzie is feeling at home across half back. That's good thing.
I did see that earlier. I was hoping you wouldn't notice. He might feel at home, but as soon as Luke McDonald and Sammy Wright come back, he's going to get kicked out of home.
Well, he doesn't game. I wonder, would he have had a contract with trigger clauses in it, or do you reckon it was a straight 1 year?
Sorry, did he sign a 1 year?
Yeah, so he's currently on what was said to be a 1 year contract when they extended last year.
Yeah, no, he's uncontracted.
So, but would it be one with triggers like Jacobs had last year?
No,
in which case he'd have to be getting to trigger.
I think it's kind of irrelevant, really, whether he's got one with triggers or whether he got one straight up. The real question is, does he want to stay? And if he does, he gets a spot. And if he doesn't, we move him on and move on with our other 14 halfback flankers. We talked a little bit about in the pre-show, and I've been somewhat of a knocker on McKenzie. And if he wants to stay, without a doubt, he has a spot next year. He's earned that. But if he wants to leave, I'm not going to give up, our salary cap structure or whatever to keep him.
I mean, but you know what? This year, probably more than any other year I can remember, has shown that we need real depth across the board. I mean, can you imagine if we had have got rid of Mullet and McKenzie last year, like a lot of people were suggesting that we should have? We would have had no one to play their role. I mean, yep. And similar up the other end. I mean, we had Nahas playing and Wagner playing, who were really the sort of fifth and sixth choices at the start of the year for that team. I mean, none of those guys featured in anyone's best 22s at the start of the year. So, I mean, it's proved that you've got to have depth. If McKenzie's willing to sign for another year, absolutely we sign him. He's shown he's a great backup option.
And this is where Cam Joyce has positioned the list as well, right? So they've ditched everyone over 23 who was a deaf player. So McMahon went and whoever the hell else, and you look at the list, the best 22 almost rolls from age 38 down to 18.
Yeah.
there's no overage list cloggers except for probably Nahas and Ray, who were both on the rookie list.
That's exactly
And
right.
when you look at it, we didn't need to use those rookie spots for speculative players because we had so many guys. We had 8 guys out of the last 2 drafts yet to play, so we didn't need rookie spots for kids. It was perfectly fine to use up those rookie spots for depth players, for proven depth.
I totally agree. There was a lot of angst on the board about Ray and, well, particularly Ray and somewhat less so Nahas. And then I look at it and go, Nahas played 18 games last year. That's a fair depth. And he's limited and, he can't kick it more than 25 metres reliably, and that's all well and good. But if you lose half a dozen half forwards, as we have this year, I'm quite happy to welcome Nahas into the fold. And if we lose 7 or 8 midfielders as we have this year, Ray's not a bad backup off the rookie list. It's about building a list of 35 players that you can rely on. And I had an interview with Isaac Smith of Hawthorn this week, and he said, coming into September, every single club wants a list of 30 players that are fit and firing that they can pick 22 from. At the moment, that's our goal. Like, we've got half a dozen players plus that are a long way from fit and firing. And you guys like Nahas and Ray are in that backup depth, whatever you want to call it. And they're important to a team that's looking to go deep in September.
Exactly.
Whatever else happens with Robbie Nahas, if they delist him again or they keep him or not, if he's gone, he's got 3 more years on AFL lists out of his career. He's played some good footy. He's won a final against the team that ditched him. He's had a good run.
Gloriously dodged around Chaplin.
Tackled Chaplin.
Yeah, he tackled him.
The tackle on Chaplin.
Yep.
And kicked the one that put us in front in that third quarter comeback against them a couple of years ago.
That was special. If for nothing more than the Richmond trolling, the recruit of Nahas has been worth it.
The number of times I've said to blokes at work, geez, you guys could really do as kind of a nippy, sort of scrappy small forward. You just need a bloke and his way around the forward line. Somebody like Nahas to do, wouldn't he? Brilliant.
But anyway, on somewhat of a related note on the preview this week, given we've got sort of 4 weeks left, I thought it was a good time to look at, where we kind of sit in terms of finals, etc. I think it's an important game this week with both sides on 12 wins. We're currently sitting 7th and 8th. West Coast is the other side that's sitting on 12 wins at the moment. Looking at their draw, and for those who haven't seen it, it's Freo, GWS away, Hawthorn away, Adelaide away. I could quite easily see West Coast losing 3 of their last 4, and I guess I'd be quite happy seeing them slip to, say, 7th or 8th, and hopefully us sneaking into, say, 6th and having a final against them at the G versus in Perth. So that's sort of what's in front of us if we can handle the next month, which is, Western Bulldogs, Hawthorn, Sydney, GWS, which is far from an easy run home, but if we can win a few of those, we could sneak into 6th and get that home final, and it's a very different looking final series than, say, if we finish 7th or 8th and end up in Perth in the first week.
I completely agree. Now, I'm convinced we're going to win all 4, so that's fine.
I agree with that. I'm also convinced that we're going to run the table and win all 4.
I also agree.
Should be favourites against the Dogs. We get Hawthorn, whose asses we own, and we owe one after kicking ourselves out of it first time.
Revenge game. Yep. We don't lose in Tassie.
Don't lose in Tassie. We'll get Sydney down there. That's no problem. They're not that good. We'll get Jacobs back. He'll kill Hanbury.
Yep.
And then round 23, we might rest a couple, but still GWS are kids. They'll start getting the squeaky bum hole.
Yeah, I'll agree. GWS will
Speakers
win
will
tough.
fight as the finals approach. But Jacob will run the table. No worries.
Yeah, that's right.
Ironically,
it'll be the first time in history that 16 wins will miss top 4.
ironically, with another so-called North rule introduced this year, in that we have a bye after round 23, there's actually no reason for us to rest players against GWS. And looking at the top 5, and it's somewhat irrelevant to us, unfortunately, because they A, have at least a game on us, and B, have a game's worth of percentage on us, and they're out of reach. They're all going to finish above us, but...
What if we beat the Bulldogs by 200 points on Saturday night?
I will go nuts and not give a shit about the rest of the season. But hilariously, we play Hawthorn currently first, GWS currently second, and Sydney currently third on the ladder. So we have a significant impact on where those top 5 teams will actually finish for the year. So it is the very definition of our destiny is in our own hands. I personally would absolutely welcome a semi-final against GWS, even if that's in Sydney or Spotless or ANZ or whatever you want to take it. I back our experience and our finals experience against their somewhat raw team and their, in my opinion, not finals-friendly game plan. So that's sort of the best case scenario for us, I think. Obviously, we're not going to finish top 4. I think that's completely out of the reach now. So our best chance is to try and get a home final first up. Be that whether Bulldogs finish 6th and we finish 7th, or vice versa, or whatever. Win through, play GWS in the second round, and go from there. And let's see what happens, because I personally think, and this was somewhat discussed on our board last week or a little bit this week, our game plan is built for September. GWS is not. The Bulldogs is not. West Coast have shown repeatedly that they can't win outside of Perth, and they've got 3 games outside of Perth in their final 4. So I personally expect West Coast to finish 8th, because I can't see them beat anyone outside of Freo, who they played this week. They've then got GWS, Hawthorn, and Adelaide away, which would be a shock if they win any of those. So let's roll the dice and see what happens come September. And then October, if we make it. Anything to add, guys?
I think we're good.
Oh, no, just on your thoughts on West Coast. Is Simo the new Ken Hinkley? Is he the one-trick pony coach who gets found out after a good year or two? Or do we still want him?
And this will be somewhat brushed off as North bias, but no. I rate Simo as a coach. I think it's somewhat of a Perth mentality, and it shows in West Coast and it shows in Freo. They're a different team when they come to Melbourne, and as much as they like to bitch and moan on the main board, the grand final is going to be at the MCG for the foreseeable future, so they're going to have to get used to it. But I would take Simo over a Cam Hinkley 7 days a week and twice on Sundays.
Would you take him over Brad Scott?
No, I am one of the few North supporters that actually likes Brad Scott.
Freak.
Oh, now I need to hang out with you in the social club and we can just hug it out, because I'm with you.
Well, I'm also part of that club.
Oh, you make a cute trio.
Thanks, mate.
Honestly, mate, I don't want to drag.
No, honestly, I think Brad Scott has been very patient about the way he's built the side, and he's had no other choice. It hasn't been Hinkley who's walked into an underperforming team chock full of top 5 picks.
Yeah, we could go for another hour talking about Brad Scott, but
yeah,
very quickly, as you said, I mean, I had the opportunity to speak to him personally at a club function, probably 12 months ago. I asked him about the build. It seemed that we went all out attack, then all out defence, then somewhat balanced. You talked about how he wanted to build certain aspects of the team, build to the different strength that he saw. We've recruited players for all that. I think he's doing a bloody good job, personally, of building towards number 5, which is what we all want. There's somewhat of a gap between us and the Hawthorns and the like. Whether we can bridge that with the free agency aspect is yet to be seen. There's numerous articles on the F website this week about Hawthorn chasing Tom Mitchell, etc. If they get him, frankly, God help us all. But if we can keep our team together and keep going in the direction we're going, we've probably got an 18-month window, as most of us probably think, that we can probably do this. And if not, then it's in terms of rebuild. But basically wrap it up there. Have you guys got any closing comments that you want to add before we wrap up for the night?
Just one. I hope Collingwood smash the Tigers tomorrow night. That's it. Other than that, go North.
In a game that has absolutely no outcome on our finals destination, I agree with you, because it would just be funny to watch the Richmond supporters who 99% of them thought they were going to be top 4 this year. Watch them further squirm when they get beaten by Collingwood.
I'm on the other side of that. I feel like if Richmond flog Collingwood, then all of the heat turns onto Buckley and Eddie. So I think that'd be great too. I mean, let's hope. I want Collingwood Richmond to flog Collingwood this week, and then both of them to lose every other game for the rest of the year.
I'm in a funny kind of situation where, because Richmond and Collingwood seemingly are going absolutely nowhere with their current coaches, I'm quite happy for them to both keep Hardwick and Buckley and stay mediocre for forever.
They're not even mediocre though; they're shit.
And that's fine by me.
If you're looking for an upset of Lols this weekend, Freo over West Coast would be pretty nice.
Yeah,
that would be awesome. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Special thanks to Philly and Rob for joining us tonight.
Pleasure being here.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for hosting. Well done.
No worries. And we'll welcome back K4E next week. And thanks for Quiv for doing all the recording and editing in his absence.
Not a problem at all.
Thanks, Quiv. Bye.
Bye, guys.